Hi, my name is Sergios Bitzakis, and I'm at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Today I'm talking about graphic novels and how we read them. So on the front end, let's talk about what graphic novels are. My experience with students both in schools and at the university is that about 50% of my students have read them before, so not everyone's familiar with these things are. The famed graphic novelist Art Spiegelman usually says that a graphic novel is something like a comic book, except for it needs a bookmark. So really, the things that differentiate a graphic novel from a comic book is that they're longer. Also, I add these other three things. They're usually by one or two creators, whereas comic books are generally created by a whole team of people. Graphic novels are usually self-contained stories. And finally, they use sequential art to tell a story. Sequential art is basically the fancy way of saying comics. So the term graphic novels gets used to cover lots of different types of books. So the first couple here that you can see are actually graphic novels. The first one on the left is Contract with God, and that is credited with being the first book to popularize the term graphic novel. But it's not actually a novel because it's actually 4 short stories that are in one book. It was published in the late 1970s, and the guy who drew it and wrote it, Will Eisner, he was trying to, talk about more adult things. So he came up with the term graphic novel to try to differentiate. Well, he didn't come up with it, but he used the term graphic novel to differentiate his book from other things out there. And on the right, that's the cover for American Born Chinese, which won the Prince Award a few years ago, I think in 2006. So, there's still graphic novels today. That one is more of an actual novel. Graphic novels also usually get lumped in with manga. Manga are comic books that come from Japan, and they're published in book form, although they come out in episodes. You're probably familiar with Naruto, I don't know, maybe from the cartoons. This is one of the most popular series there are. But manga are also get lumped in with graphic novels frequently. Trade paperbacks also get lumped into what graphic novels, the category of graphic novels. Trade paperbacks are actually comic books that get collected into one volume. Right here is a Batman one. It's a storyline that went 4 issues, but they publish it as one book now, and it's just called a trade paperback. It's considered a graphic novel of a sort. Well, now that I've talked about what graphic novels are and what some of the examples of them are, we should talk about something really exciting that we're all going to be into, and that's grammar. Grammar is, how we understand things, how we understand text. So right here we have a story. It's a very short story. It's only 6 words long. You can read it and think about what it means. But there's some things there in the grammar that help us figure out what it does mean. There's the order of the sentences. It's who the subject of the sentence is. It's that certain verbs. So what does it mean if father died, mother triumphed, I left? Who is I? There's lots of grammatical clues into the story that make you think about what it means. Is this a murder story? Is this some kind of Lifetime movie? Is this something else? We don't know. You might have lots of understandings of what the story means, but because it's set up the way it is, it's the grammar in it leads us to lots of different conclusions because there's many parts of it that are up in the air. So this is how we do grammar with a very traditional print story. Well, this isn't very traditional. This is only 6 words long, but traditional print. So that's usually what we're familiar talking about with language arts anyway. So there's also a grammar to comics or sequential art. And I'm going to have an example here of something pretty familiar. You probably know that this is Peanuts. You might know that the 2 characters, there's Lucy and then there's Linus. in this comic strip. Lucy is Linus's bigger sister, older sister. We also know that Lucy is kind of bossy and perhaps could be called a dream killer of sorts. Linus is more the philosophical happy kid. So why don't you press pause right here and take a second and figure out what this story is saying. Okay, now we're back. Now I'm going to do a little walkthrough on some grammatical pointers in these comic strips. So I'm starting here with panel 1. We see Lucy, and we also see Linus. He's yelling, "I got an A on my report card." If you look at the comic strip, they're all yelling. Everything is in caps. Everything ends with an exclamation point. But we're going to look at some other cues other than the words to talk about how meaning is made. When you look at Linus, you can tell that he's happy because his mouth is a giant smile that takes up about half his face. You also notice that his hands are up in the air, kind of like in a victory formation. Also, you might notice that he is running. You can tell this because his feet are not touching the ground and underneath there's a shadow. I guess you could think that maybe he's levitating towards his sister, but more likely, because this is a realistic comic strip, he's running over there. You might also notice that Lucy is gigantic compared to him, and that's because Schultz, who drew this, is using proportions to show distance. So she is in the foreground, he is in the background running towards her. So in slide 2, you can see that he's explaining to her what he's showing her. Her entire facial expression has disappeared, which is one of those magic things that happens in comics. Her mouth is still there, you just can't see it. You can also see here that they are the same size relatively. She's a little taller, it's just because she's bigger, but they're standing next to each other and they're having a conversation. You can see that in the position of the figures. You could also see that the focus of this is the center piece of paper. Her eyes are looking at it, so are his. Also, you might notice he's got a little hand up there. That's the little explaining hand. Here we have a shift in camera angle a little bit. Lucy is showing the paper to Linus and telling him what it actually says. As in the second panel, the focus in this one is also on the paper. It's in the middle, and both of their eyes are looking towards it. They're both facing it. You also notice a couple things about Linus. His mouth before was big and smiley and was still kind of big. In the second panel is shrunk down almost entirely. Also his hands. Now they're kind of fidgety and in front of him instead of being pointing or being raised in exaltation. Also, magically, the backgrounds have entirely disappeared. In the past ones, you saw like a little tree or a little grass showing that it was outside. Now, who knows where it is? Gone. Panel 4 is the punchline. So this is where you see that Linus has realized what's going on and how it's affecting him. Notice his mouth now is pretty much a straight slash with a little curve at the bottom. So that tells you a little bit about the emotions that he's feeling. You might also notice that his hand is down, and the paper, which was in the middle focus of both the last two panels, is now towards the bottom and not really in focus at all. It's not the main point in this panel. And the backgrounds have also appeared or reappeared, but Lucy is nowhere to be found. So if you look, there's reasons why the author does that too, probably to accentuate his feelings of loneliness or being small. She's gone and nothing is around him but space. So he's just kind of stuck there in that little spot by himself. Also not having an A. So if we look at the long view, you can see a sequence here about this I have focusing on the hands. You know, his hands are up, then one is up. Well, both hands are up in the first panel, then one is up in the second, then they're both middle, and then they're both down. So there's a flow to how the information is being conveyed, how the figures are moving, things like that. And this is part of the pacing as well. It's part of, you know, how the story is being told and how quickly the story is being told. Because one of the magic things of comics, or what makes them work, is that you have things in panels, but you have spaces in between the panels, and those are called gutters, and those indicate that there's some kind of passage of time, kind of like how periods work in that short story we looked at. Well, hopefully I haven't beaten that peanut strip into the ground for y'all, but I just wanted to also give you a couple words, a list of words here that go along with what I've been talking about, that are parts of graphic novel grammar, part of how we understand them. Some of the technical words like panels and gutters. There's various kinds of balloons. There's motion lines, negative space, which was something I was keying on, as well as pacing, and symbolic conventions. There's not any in this, but you know, things like speed lines or stars or birds if somebody gets hit in the head. There's lots of tools that the artist has at their fingertips to use in conveying meaning, much like a writer has lots of tools about, you know, manipulating grammar. Just in graphic novels and comics and sequential art in general, there's a lot more visual tools. But one of the things that's important to realize, I mean, when we're teaching grammar and teaching reading, we get those technical terms. So it should be the same way when we're talking about comics and graphic novels. And I want to thank you for your attention and your time, and I hope this wasn't too boring for you. If you are interested in graphic novels at all after this talk, I have a blog here that has, you can see the URL for, where I list lots and lots of different graphic novels, and I have links to other websites that have various resources for different grade levels, from kindergarten all the way up to college and adult people. So that's it. I hope this was fruitful for you, and I hope you have a great day.